Hi, good evening and welcome back to today's edition of the daily newspaper analysis, which is part of the Roznama by Clat Possible. So let's begin with today's news stories. The very first story which I wanted to take a look at is from the Hindu, which talks about how Iran has granted safe passage to ships of certain countries to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Starting at the very top, what is a strait? It is a narrow body of water connecting two larger bodies of water. So this part will be a strait. So the Strait of Hormuz connects which two larger water bodies? It is the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Okay, so these two larger bodies of water are connected by the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, this is a key fact, very important in the US-Israel-Iran war as well. So Iran has announced that the ships of friendly nations will be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and it has specifically named 5 countries which get safe passage. What are these 5? India, China, Russia, Iraq, and Pakistan. Okay, India, China, Russia, Iraq, and Pakistan. These 5 countries have been specifically named by the Foreign Minister of Iran, Araghchi, as those countries whose ships will have safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so I hope this is crystal clear. It's an important development in the course of this war. As you all know, the Strait of Hormuz is vital. It's one of those most important maritime choke points or oil supply choke points, because a huge proportion of the world's crude oil, LPG, LNG moves through the Strait of Hormuz before reaching the rest of the world. And its impact is especially high in India as well. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So Iran has announced this. Simultaneously, the Indian Navy has launched an operation called Operation Urja Shakti. Okay, so Operation Urja Shakti has been launched by the Indian Navy in order to escort and support ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. Which ships? India-bound ships, especially those carrying energy supplies. So Operation Urja Shakti. Urja, of course, means energy. Shakti meaning power. Okay. Now, moving forward, as you all know, over the last few days, there has been a lot of discussion about what will be the terms of ending this war. The US has presented some sort of a plan. Iran has responded with certain preconditions of its own. I would not want to speculate as to what will be the ultimate outcome of the agreement, but each and every day we are seeing updates about possible provisions which could make a part of a deal to end the war between the US and Iran. Of course, the big wild card here is the state of Israel, which has not indicated its willingness to stop the war at all. What is mentioned here? Trump claimed that some important people in Iran had given a present to the US. What was this present? They had allowed certain oil tanker ships to move through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, it's entirely unclear how true this is, because Trump has claimed that this is the case. Trump also claimed that Iran is negotiating. Iran has completely denied that we are negotiating with the US. Okay, so I would suggest that we let a week, 10 days pass to let these news stories develop. Because if we learn these points today or right now, it will be counterproductive. Let us see how this war resolves and under what conditions. Okay, moving forward, let's now have a look. There is another angle which we are looking at today, which is the G7. Now, why has the G7 come in the news? Obviously, it is in context of the war in West Asia or the Middle East between the US, Israel, and Iran. As you know, in a couple of months, the G7 summit is about to take place. So you have to know, I mean, we can do this in advance. Which country is the chair of the G7 this year? It is the country of France, right? And India will be an invited nation to the G7 summit. All right. Now, just in the last day or two, there was a G7 foreign ministers meeting. Hence, the news stories today about the G7. Okay. The actual summit where the heads of state and government will attend, that is going to take place in the month of June, where at Evian in France, Evian. All right. Moving forward, a different front of the war in the Middle East. Now, most of the focus in the news and otherwise has been on the war started by US and Israel against Iran. However, as part of the same war, Israel has also invaded the country of Lebanon. It has caused actually huge mass migration and internal displacement of the Lebanese people. Why is Israel attacking Lebanon? Basically, they say we are not attacking the country of Lebanon. We are simply attacking Hezbollah, right? Hezbollah is one of those proxy groups of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is big militarily and politically in the country of Lebanon. Okay. Now, what began as airstrikes ultimately led to an invasion into Lebanon by Israel. And of course, Israel has invaded Lebanon several times over the past 60 or 70 years. Okay. So, that also does not seem to be moving any particular kind of resolution. Israel has basically announced its intention to occupy parts of Lebanon, right? Which is why a particular river has been in the news. Can somebody tell me in the comments which river I am talking about? The river which flows through the country of Lebanon. Its name starts with the letter L. So we are, of course, talking about the Litani River. This is a river which flows through the country of Lebanon. And Israel has announced that those parts of the country of Lebanon which fall on one side of the Litani River will be occupied by Israeli forces. The head of the group Hezbollah has announced that they are not interested in truce talks with Israel. Okay. So these are the two vital sort of angles or aspects of the war in West Asia or the Middle East. The main one being prosecuted by the US and Israel against Iran, and the other being the invasion of Lebanon by the state of Israel. Okay. Moving forward, as you can see, I was telling you a little bit earlier, there has been talk and cross talk about, is there a deal? Is there movement towards a deal? And both sides have essentially dug in their heels, meaning they are sticking to their positions. Iran has announced it has certain non-negotiables. The US has announced that it has certain non-negotiables. And many of them contradict each other. So, which is why the word used here is dig in their heels, meaning stick to their positions. Nobody seems to be compromising at the moment, at least public. Now, moving on from the war, something important that is going on, which began yesterday, is MC14 of the WTO or the World Trade Organization. Now, what is MC? MC stands for Ministerial Conference. What is the Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization? It is the highest decision-making body of the World Trade Organization. Remember, it is biennial, meaning it only meets once in 2 years. Now, so once in 2 years. Now, where is MC14 taking place? It is taking place in the city of Yaoundé, in the country of Cameroon. Okay. So as of now, these are the important details. Which ministerial conference? The 14th one. It takes place biennially or once in 2 years. And finally, it's taking place in Yaoundé, a city of Cameroon. Okay. The basics of WTO, absolutely important for you to do. Remember, the WTO came about through the Marrakesh Agreement. The Marrakesh Agreement, which was signed in 1994, and the WTO got created in 1995. Now, there was a round of negotiations which led to the signing of the Marrakesh Agreement. That's known as the Uruguay round. Uruguay. If the question is, what is the precursor of WTO? What came before the WTO system? It is GATT. GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And finally, where is it headquartered? It's headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. And who leads this organization? It is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Ngozi-Okonjo-Iweala, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the first woman and the first African person to lead the World Trade Organization. Okay, so I hope those details are clear. Is India a member? Yes, India is a founding member of the World Trade Organization. Another important thing to remember is that WTO is not an agency of the United Nations. WTO functions independent. Okay, so with those details, let's move forward. We'll see the outcomes of this conference. It's taking place, it's over a period of 4 or 5 days. So once it concludes, we will be taking a look at the exact outcomes. For now, I just wanted to do the basics of the WTO and the basics of the ministerial conference. Moving forward, something very important and interesting. India announced its new national targets under the Paris Agreement. Now, remember, the Paris Agreement is an agreement under UNFCCC. What is UNFCCC? It is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay, so the Paris Agreement was signed under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Under the Paris Agreement, we have to know about 2 particular concepts which are related to this news. One is the short form NDC. So what is an NDC? NDC stands for Nationally Determined Contributions. Nationally Determined Contributions. Effectively, a simpler way to say that is climate targets. What is the country saying it wants to achieve in terms of working on the issue of climate change? Okay. So what are NDCs? Nationally Determined Contributions, which are nothing but the country's climate targets. Okay. The second concept here is known as ratchet mechanism. This is basically a principle under the Paris Agreement that whenever a country submits its nationally determined contributions, they must be higher or better than the previous nationally determined contributions. Okay, which means, let's say India gives an NDC in 2025, that, for example, then India gives its next NDC in 2030. So the one in 2030 has to be better and more ambitious than its previous targets. Okay, so the Paris Agreement doesn't set a minimum for each country to do. Rather, it says you get to set your own targets, which are the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. But every time you set them, they must be more ambitious than the previous one. Okay, so that is the idea. Now, India has submitted its next NDC, or nationally determined contributions. Now, these nationally determined contributions have a target year of 2035. Okay, now the NDC which has been submitted right now, it primarily gives 3 targets. Okay, this is actually a very good article in Indian Express Explained, laying out the progression of India's nationally determined contributions. Okay, so on the first one, which is reducing emissions intensity, meaning how much CO2 emission do you have per unit of GDP. So India has laid a target of 47% reduction. Okay, so point 1 is about emissions intensity. And what is our target? 47%. To be achieved by when? By 2035. 47% reduction compared to the 2005 levels. Okay? So on emissions intensity, the target is reduction of 47%. Then number 2, the second target is about the proportion of non-fossil fuel electricity. Meaning, what percentage of our electricity production is from non-fossil fuel sources, meaning renewable sources. Okay, I hope that is clear. So point 1 was about emissions intensity. The target is to reduce it by 47% compared to 2005 levels by 2035. On non-fossil fuel electricity share, the target which has been set is 60%. Okay, what does that mean? That 60% of our electricity production should come from non-fossil fuel electricity source. By when? By 2035. And the third point is about the creation of carbon sinks. And what is the target which has been set here? The target is that we want 3.5 to 4 billion tons of carbon sinks above 2005 levels. Okay, I hope that is clear. So point 1 and point 3 are comparable to 2005 levels. So essentially, what are India's 2035 nationally determined contributions? Number 1, to reduce emission intensity of the economy by 47% compared to 2005 levels. Number 2, to ensure that 60% of our electricity production comes from non-fossil fuel sources by 2035. And third, to create 3.5 to 4 billion tons more carbon sink capacity, again by 2035, and 3.5 to 4 billion above 2005 levels. Okay, so those are India's nationally determined contributions for the year 2035. This is an excellent article. If you want to reference it, just to check it or to note it down, you can find it in the Indian Express on the explained page. Moving on, today the new Prime Minister of Nepal, Balendra Shah, is taking oath as the Prime Minister, right? This is of course after the Gen Z protests led to the resignation of KP Sharma Oli, and there was an interim Prime Minister named Sushila Karki. who had become Nepal's first female prime minister. After that, the elections were held and the party of Balendra Shah, the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, emerged victorious. And he is going to be taking oath as the Prime Minister of Nepal today. On the other hand, you see Oli mentioned here, KP Sharma Oli, who had to resign after the Gen Z protests. There was an inquiry committee which has recommended that the previous Prime Minister, KP Sharma Oli, should be prosecuted for his role in the killings of the Gen Z protesters. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Moving forward, we now come to the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Amendment Bill 2026. Now, this is a tragic piece of legislation. The new amendment essentially denudes transgender people of their right to self-perceived gender identity. It takes away that right explicitly. Under the Transgender Persons Act, it used to say that all transgender persons shall have the right to their self-perceived gender identity. Meaning, whatever I think it is, that is my gender identity. This is a right which had been affirmed by the Supreme Court in a case called Nalsa versus Union of India. This is long ago, around 2014. Then in 2019, the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act came and it also recognized this right. Now, out of the blue, without any public consultation, the government introduced this legislation in Parliament and passed it, removing the right of transgender persons to their self-perceived gender identity. There have been widespread protests against this across the metro cities of India. Not just that, several members of the National Council on Transgender Persons, which is a government body, have resigned. One member of the National Human Rights Commission has resigned in protest. And finally, there was a committee that had been established in October 2025 by the Supreme Court, chaired by a retired judge of the High Court, named Justice Asha Menon. And this committee has also written to the government, asking for this bill to be withdrawn because it violates the rights of transgender persons under the Constitution of India. Okay, so those are the news stories. Derek O'Brien has written an excellent editorial on the subject in the Indian Express, saying that gender identity is now to be decided by the state. Why does he say that? Because this bill, among other things, mandates the requirement of a medical test by a medical board before issuing a certificate of transgender identity. Okay, so the law has very draconian provisions. The limited decent thing which the law did is to redefine and expand offenses against transgender persons. Okay, moving forward, interestingly, just yesterday it was also reported that the International Olympic Committee has essentially banned transgender women from competing in female sports. Okay, so this is an interesting development. It will obviously be relevant for the next Summer Olympics. Where are those taking place and when? The next Olympics are going to take place in 2028 in the city of Los Angeles in the United States. Okay, so homework for you, you absolutely have to know where and when the next Summer and Winter Olympics and Paralympics are going to take place. And this is a decision made by the International Olympic Committee to prohibit transgender women from competing in female sports. Further, there is a requirement of being tested, okay, a scientific test to determine your sexual identity. Okay, moving forward, two things you have to find out. That's homework for you. Number one, where is the International Olympic Committee headquartered, and who is the president of the International Olympic Committee. Okay, the headquarters, I'll leave it to you to find out, and the president as well. Both of these things are mentioned in today's articles which have come in the newspaper today. All right. The name of the president, her name is Kirsty Coventry. Kirsty, Kirsty, and Coventry, Coventry. Okay. Now, moving forward, today, by the way, is World Theatre Day. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to flag a recent achievement by an Indian. His name is Amol Palekar, who recently won the Meta Lifetime Achievement Award. Okay, so this is like a short piece. I just wanted to flag it as a one-liner for you. Moving forward, there is an editorial in the Hindu today talking about the Supreme Court's judgment just issued a few days back, saying that only Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs can be considered to be scheduled castes, and converting from these religions to any other religion would automatically remove the scheduled caste status of the person. Additionally, the court held that this does not directly apply to scheduled tribes, and that scheduled tribe identity is irrespective of religion. The court based this reasoning on the Constitution Scheduled Castes Order and the Constitution Scheduled Tribes Order. The Constitution Scheduled Castes Order specifies that only Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists can be considered scheduled castes. Okay, so this is an editorial written in the Hindu today. There is one strand of criticism of this judgment. What is that? The sociological experience in the country says that many scheduled caste and Dalit communities end up facing stigma due to their caste identity, even when they have converted to other religions. So in that sense, taking away the protection, benefits, reservations given to scheduled castes simply on converting to another religion might not be the best idea. So that is basically the criticism of this stand. The court, of course, was interpreting the Constitution Scheduled Caste Order, which specifically states the same. Okay. Moving forward, a sort of very nice article today in the newspaper in the Hindu. It's a Q&A, it's a conversation with Mr. Sanjoy Ghosh and Ashwini Deshpande. Sanjoy Ghosh, of course, is an alumnus of the National Law School of India University in Bangalore, and I have had the privilege of interning in his office once. So anyway, this is an article, should men get paternity leave in India? Of course, why has this question suddenly come up in the news again? Because recently in a judgment about maternity benefits, the Supreme Court also recommended that Parliament frame a law about paternity leave, right? Meaning leave given to new fathers. Okay. So this is a good one. This gives you not only a legal perspective, but also a sociological perspective, grounds it in the Constitution, tells you about the international experience as well. So I certainly recommend that you go through this article. I wanted to flag this article for you simply to tell you to read about this phrase, Global South. I'm sure you are at this point tired of reading this word. If you read the newspaper religiously, you'll see that this word comes up at least once a day in some or the other newspapers. The Global South, of course, refers to developing and underdeveloped countries, whereas the developed countries are usually called the Global North. Okay? All right. India, of course, tries to position itself as a member and leader of the global South, seeking justice and fairness for developing and underdeveloped countries, right? Basically making the point that the global North or the developed countries have many a times attained their status of development at the expense of the global South, right? Through colonialism and imperialism. And so the views of the global South are essentially in favor of fair trade and non-intervention of the big powers in the affairs of smaller, less developed countries. Okay. Moving forward, the Union government has issued a statement assuring the people that we have sufficient oil for at least 60 days and enough liquefied petroleum gas for a month. Okay. There are, of course, lots of rumors flying around. There is also on occasion some truth to those rumors. I'll tell you my own experience just yesterday. I visited 5 different petrol pumps in the city of Lucknow, and all 5 of them said that they had run out of petrol. Now, the full story is that by the evening, those petrol pumps did again have the availability of petrol. So ultimately, it would be wrong to say that there is no crisis, no shortage. The situation is certainly not dire yet in the way that we can feel it day to day. But the government has assured that we have oil supplies for 60 days and LPG for a month. All right. Moving forward, I just wanted to flag S400s. What are S400s? They are, first of all, the full name is S400 Triumph. These are air defense systems which India purchases from Russia. And in India, we have codenamed them Sudarshan Chakra. Okay. They are air defense systems to intercept drones, missiles, etc., etc., etc. There was an article today saying that the deliveries of these S400 Triumph air defense systems has been expedited, and that India will be receiving at least 2 more shipments of the S400 from Russia within the year. And finally, an article in the newspaper today about living wills. What is another name for a living will? It is advance directive. Now, this is something perhaps the newspaper wants to talk about in context of the death of Harish Rana, right? Who became the first person to be permitted by a court in India for passive euthanasia, where his parents and near and dear ones had applied to the court to grant them permission to withdraw medical care in order to allow nature to take its course. So the Supreme Court, for the first time, permitted the same and allowed Harish Rana to pass away. In that context, the newspaper is talking about advance directives or living wills. Now think about it. In other contexts, a will is a document which says what will happen to your property after you die. So what is a living will or an advance directive? The concept of a living will or advance directive is to lay down your wishes with respect to medical treatment. That in case you are not in a position to decide for yourself, as happened with Harish Rana, your advance directive or living will acts as an order or a direction to the family, to the medical staff, that these are your medical wishes, that in so and so circumstances, you should not be given medical care anymore. Okay, that is at its core the idea behind a living will or an advance directive. So if you want to read a little more about the basics of it, you can go to the Hindu in today's newspaper and read this article. Why do we need a living will? The impetus to give this article in the paper is certainly Harish Rana's case. Okay, all right. So that's all for today. These are all of the important articles that you need to know from today's newspaper. We have covered both the Indian Express and the Hindu. Now, if you want to try questions, and you should, if you want to try questions on editorials from today, on news stories from today, English, logic, legal, GK, and maths, practice some vocabulary, read the top 5 news stories of the day in the form of actionable points, in the form of points which can actually be asked in the exam. You should log in to the Roznama on our website, clatpossible.com. If you don't want to miss any of our videos, do subscribe to our channel. It was a pleasure to see all of you this evening, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again tomorrow. Thank you, good night, and goodbye.